Coming up in this episode.
Artists are not saying, please help me streamline. Please help me go faster. Art is truly a journey into self. And the way that ChatGPT gets you and the way that the tech overlords get you is they say, would you like me to give you the first paragraph? And right there, you're fucked. Because once you say yes and you think it sounds better than what you could come up with, you're going to have a hard time telling your brain that you're going to be able to craft a better idea. And now your flow to ideation, which is truly cosmic and spiritual, is snapped.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Here for the Truth. My name's Joel Rafidi, got Yerasimos with me as always. Hope you're all doing well out there, striving to live more authentically, be more real, climb that mountain, which is something that we're definitely all about over here. Today we have Nick Jobe joining us. Nick is a longtime friend of Yerasimos here. We get deep into his personal story and some of the rifts that were formed during the COVID years and the potential for reconciliation as well, which I think in this case between Yerasimos and Nick was something rare and unique and beautiful. And that story is told in this podcast. Nick is a screenwriter, an actor, and he's a coach to screenwriters as well. And we get into an awesome conversation around art, creation, the impact of AI in the realm of art as well, and also the importance and the power of going your own way, shifting norms, and being a disruptor in whatever realm it is that you're choosing to pursue. So I hope you guys really enjoy this conversation. Here is Nick. Nick Jobe is a writing coach and industry strategist, working with screenwriters, authors, and thought leaders to hone their narrative. His writing clients have sold pitches to Amazon and Netflix and staffed on major network TV shows. His approach encourages his writers to think more like entrepreneurs than artists and to disrupt Hollywood norms of engagements. In the thought leadership space, his clients have graced the stages of conferences for women and spoken at Fortune Global 500 companies. Prior to focusing all his time on his writers, Nick was an actor, writer, working on projects like David Fincher's Oscar-nominated Monk. Is that Monk or Mank? Mank. Apologies there. And the 5th season of Yellowstone. For more of Nick online, check out his Mindset and Strategy podcast for screenwriters Beyond the Script with co-host Stephen Harper, or at his website, Page One TV. Nick, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. So glad to be with you both.
Oh, absolutely. So you've known Yerasimos for 18 years, is that right? 18
years, man. We were tadpoles.
Oh, man. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry about that, bro. That sucks.
I know. I mean, you think he's a regressed human now. You should have seen him back then. All id.
That's hilarious, man. Yeah, we met in an acting class, but anyways, man. Dude, something we like to do when we start off with all first-time guests is we want to get more into like your story, your personal hero's journey, your major rites of passage, all the things that have kind of led you to who you are today, doing the work that you do, and also the perspectives that you have.
Great, man.
You can start whenever. You can start when you were born.
Start when I was born. Yeah. And I love those terms, by the way. I really like the term rites of passage. You messaged that to me, and it really made me think a lot about, what was it that chiseled away the person you see and you hear today, right? What are those major events? And I thought about it, and it's sometimes I always want to say, like, I hate to start on a negative, but I do think that a lot of my early life had a lot of fear in it. I think I was kind of a fearful kid. Imaginative, yes, super imaginative, right? My imagination was off the charts, but there was a lot of fear, right? Like I grew up in the 80s and I was a latchkey kid, and, just so happened that I spent a lot of time by myself, and maybe longer at home than I should have stayed at home, right? I mean, back in the day it was like, we'll just let the kids go or let them come home whenever. But for me, I had a single parent household, and I would stay home a lot waiting for my caregiver, my mom, to come home. And now that I'm older, realizing that the time I spent from school to when she got home was probably longer than maybe some of the other kids, right? So there was an experience that I had where just so much, there was a lot of fear. And I think that a lot of the things that I've worked through, my own health anxiety, fear of the future, fear of the past, anxiety and depression, they all kind of come from that time, right? So I think fearful, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of my early life had a lot of fear around it. And again, when you're home alone a lot, you're an only child, the good side is that there's an imaginative component too, right? My mom used to let me just like paint and draw on the walls, which all of them, like no holds barred. So I was so deep in like crafting, and like friends would come over to play He-Man and I would have crafted this elaborate narrative, right? I'm like, He-Man's like he's been tortured for 6 hours. Skeletor's coming in, like I would craft because my imagination, it had to grow. There was so much time, but I think what filled that imagination and I think in the 80s, kids were probably watching horror movies sooner than they should have been watching horror movies. And I think what filled that imagination was a lot of like the horror movies that I was watching, probably too young to be watching them. So there was this component of like, a little bit of that sort of latchkey kid neglect. And then there was all this imaginative energy that sometimes trended towards the horrifying. So when I would sit home alone and wait for my caregiver to come home, and there was, alcoholism, things of that nature there as well. My imagination would often be filled with like, what's in those dark spaces over there, right? Like there was just, I was just a little bit of a fearful kid, a sweet kid, a really kind kid, but a fearful kid. And I think that those two components really stayed with me, but kind of all throughout growing up, right? There was like this charming, charismatic guy who had this great imagination. But then there was all this kind of like low level trauma and, fear of making the wrong person mad. I was just a fearful kid. And, I always kind of fast forward because I think for me, the growing up was moving to New York City. And I moved to New York City when I was 23, after taking 5 years to not finish my undergraduate degree. I moved to New York to do an acting program, and I don't know why I wanted to go to New York, but my mother gave me the opportunity, and I will say about my mom, she did help foster whatever I wanted. There was a lot of whatever you want, which on some level was a curse, but also a gift because it allowed me to go, okay, well, this is what I want. And I didn't, I know men are generally a little bit more immature than women, but I think I was maybe the most immature 23-year-old that I have ever known. I mean, I didn't have a lot of inner resilience. I didn't know anything about my own value. There was a lot of like health anxiety and fear. And so my first few years in New York, I think I was really kind of lost. I was like a chronic weed smoker, really trying to self-medicate a lot of what I didn't know. My, just it wasn't that I was socially anxious. I was socially pretty graceful, but there was just a lot of fear of things, right? And weird health anxieties. I think I crafted a lot of, I remember when I was 7 thinking that I had leg cancer and telling my mother that I'm like, we need to go to the hospital. Like I'm sick. And just knowing now, looking back, that that's not normal. That's not a normal thought for a 7-year-old to have. So think about that, 16, 17 years later, that there was just a lot of like the health anxiety, I think was another big identifier, for me.
What do you think was like the early seeds or like the catalyst for that health anxiety at such a young age?
I think that, well, I have, obviously I've explored a lot of this in therapy, but I think that some of it had to do with the fact that when I would become sick, I was able to get the most closeness from my mom. I was able to get the most closeness from my caregiver. Being sick or being ill or having some sort of crisis would create an opportunity to feel really close and maybe get some of that like more intimate love that I really longed for.
Yeah.
So I think I remember when I first started recognizing this was an issue, like in my late 20s, I started saying to myself, like, there will be no reward for being sick. Like it's not going to reward you for crafting an illness. So yeah, it's great. And I remember even my 20s, I was sick a lot, whether it was like a throat thing or I was just sick a lot. One of those kind of kids. So, New York, you don't have a choice. It kind of grows you up, right? First of all, I had like I don't know, there's maybe you guys know, but there's a term, and I'm going to try and say this in a way that positions me as not to Gen X, but there's a term for girlfriends who like take guys who need a lot of work and like get them all set up to succeed. I don't know if but like
I know what you're talking about. I just don't. I can't think of the term.
I had a girlfriend like that who was like, she helped me like find a regular job, like get on, like she stabilized me on some level. I remember like it was in my late 20s, but I think it wasn't until, I was in and out of acting class, and I was in acting class with Yerasimos, and our teacher at the time was very much about, digging deep into self. And obviously there was a cap on how far into self I could go, because there was tons of guardrails around what I didn't know. But I think it was really, for me, I started having really bad money issues in my 20s, early 30s. Bad, like I would, I didn't know how to hold on to money, right? I think it had a lot to do with value. I would just let money go. And so I was in an acting class with Larry Moss, the great Larry Moss, and he said out loud to the whole class, I think I was 33, and he had given me a reckoning that week by saying, there's you're afraid of antisocial, dark, strong, masculine energies and roles. Why are you so fearful of being strong, masculine, antisocial, and dark? What's the fear? And so that was like the first reckoning. And then he said to the whole group, and I was like, I remember the day he said this, I had to borrow money from a scene partner to have lunch. And he said, if you're having problems with money and debt, you need to go to Debtors Anonymous and figure out who you're debting to in your history. Who is it you're debting to? What is it, right? And so I did. Like a week later, I started going to DA.
I remember that. I remember that now, because we had lost touch for a couple of years, and then when we reconnected, you had been like, in your DA experience and going through all that level of your growth. So yeah,
what is that? If you guys can basically, what is DA?
He can explain it.
I mean, at some point, I don't know when, AA splintered off into people thinking the 12 steps could cure all kinds of maladies, right? So there was Overeaters Anonymous, there's Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, and then there was Debtors Anonymous, which was people. And, I used to go to meetings in New York, and some people would be like Upper East Side wives who just could not stop shopping. They were just like they just couldn't. The feeling of shopping was filling up something for them. And for me, I just couldn't hold on to money. If I had it, it needed to go, right? And I also was so far away from knowing my own value. So 12-step for me was the first really big, I had a spiritual awakening in that program, 100%. Because when they walked me over to the third step and like letting God take over your life, I was like, God, come on, man. And I'm like, I'm a New Yorker. I'm like, God people are not smart people. God people are not like, those aren't people I want to, right? These are like, and I thought about, the way the media had portrayed the religious right. Or I thought about people who were invested in God as maybe not as smart for some reason, right? I had that sort of whatever. So for me to finally like give in and say, well, whatever's going on with me, I am powerless over it, because I can't figure out what I can't figure out. I can't see, as like Alan Watts would say, I can't see my own head. I couldn't see what was wrong with me. So I really grew up in that program. Part of that program is keeping your numbers. So you get really clear with how much money you're spending, right? In all areas. So that clarity like started to just open things, right? And when you're in 12-step, you look for the miracles, and I had miracles. There were things opening up. I started to, get some TV auditions, and because I started realizing that being a theater actor was not, you could not make a career out of it. I mean, you really can't make a career out of acting anymore, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I started to kind of wisen up, and a little bit wisen up to my own value. So I spent a long time in the rooms of DA, and it just grew me. I don't know if I'd ever had that kind of like parental style leadership. And I had a little bit of a distant relationship from my own father. And so I found in male sponsors a lot of the answer to a lot of the father hunger I had. You've ever heard that term, father hunger, but I had tons of father hunger. I was just kind of looking for a man to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So I found a sponsor who was also somebody in the arts, and it did a lot for me. I was working in a restaurant at the time, starting to build my writing coaching business little by slowly. And, you know, all this, became very grateful for my restaurant job. I worked at a very nice restaurant. I still go back there from time. I was just there in New York. I can name check it, I guess, whatever. Fiore.
Alfieri, man.
Yeah, Fiore. Yerasimos has been there.
Yeah.
It's a great restaurant. But, you know, it was a Michelin star place, and it taught, and, you know, and it
I still remember our conversation because you were doing, I don't know, like data entry, like we were acting in New York. You were doing data entry work.
Yeah.
And as someone who grew up in the restaurant business,
Yeah.
and knowing your personality, knowing your intelligence, knowing how you can be charming, I was like, dude, why aren't you working in the restaurant business part-time like a lot of other creative people are doing? And then obviously you scored a great job and you excelled at it.
And a good example of my sort of fearfulness is that I think I was afraid of dropping things or not being able to carry things or something. Like I was like, I don't know if I can carry those glasses, you know? And sure enough, I did drop and break many glasses early on in that job. But I was also, you know, I was very good. I was gregarious and all these things. And there was a system there, right? It was a fine dining restaurant. And I was able to perform on stage every night, and it allowed me to have the income to grow my writing coaching business, do my acting thing, and things started to, you know, get better. I mean, really, that's, you know, 12-step was really the gateway for me to getting better. And then I was out here, and then, you know, fast forward to I moved to Los Angeles. And
we reconnected really when you moved out here, which was
reconnected
several years ago.
I moved out here in 2017. Yeah. So, and I guess here's another, what took me out here was I started meditating, and I started following someone on the internet who suggested trying to meditate 2 hours per day.
Oh yeah, I remember. Dude.
And so I started it was almost 6 months to a year where I meditated 2 hours per day. And talk about, I mean, there's just no way that can't change your brain chemistry. I was like, I just remember waking up one day out of a long meditation and being like, what the fuck am I doing in New York? I do not like it here. I don't like being here. I've lived in the same pretty small studio apartment for 7 years, right? Like and I think for me, and it's funny, Yerasimos, you talk about when I saw you at Fiore that one time, I had a lot of that feeling that people who had good or great things in their life, whether it was a nice apartment or a great career, that those things were for them, but not for me, right? Like, you know, Yerasimos, he could come to the nice restaurants, not really, those things are for him. These sort of grand, luxurious, expansive things, they didn't feel like they were for me, which is why I kind of held so tightly to that little studio apartment I had and that restaurant job. I was just really afraid of what any kind of calculated risk might look like in my life and where it might lead me, because in my mind, it always led me to the worst possible outcomes. So yeah, I woke up from a 2-hour meditation one day and I'm like, it's time to get the fuck out of here. And I just did, you know, I told everybody that I told some people like my landlord and stuff that I had a job in LA, and I moved. And I think I had $5,000 in my pocket.
Yeah. Also, when was it that I remember from our conversation, like, because you said earlier you were like a chronic weed smoker and even like, you know, you drink, but you stopped. I remember there was a moment in our past when we had the conversation, like, dude, I don't smoke weed anymore. I don't drink anymore.
You know,
I don't know if that's still the case.
When I think, you know, two things, well, when people say like, hey, you know, you have a great life, what'd you do? I think the two things that I can say is that, one, I always ask for help when I really feel like I'm at a loss. Yeah. I always go to help. And the other piece is just somehow I think there's been a good inner compass for when shit is not going well. And with weed, I was just like, this feels like a dead end every time. Like I love smoking weed, but my career, my life, nothing was going anywhere. And so there's just that inner ticker going like, you're not moving. I just have that two-step component of that inner ticker that goes, you're stuck right now. And I get it now. I get it in my business. You're stuck right now. You need to pivot. And then the second piece that goes, you need to ask someone for help to help you with that pivot, because you can't solve it on your own. So I think I was 30 when I quit smoking weed. And I just was like, I can't. Another one that I kind of woke up and was like, this is not getting me anywhere near my highest self. So yeah, fast forward to moving to LA, And I started trying to do my writing coaching business out here, which I'd been kind of building in New York, and I was kind of self-taught. I'd had a couple classes from screenwriting mentors, and I was teaching a class at this place called the Actors Green Room in New York. And I tried to bring that same stuff out to LA. And I think because LA had all the real writers, like the real screenwriters, I felt such a sense of inferiority. Like it was deep that I couldn't promote my services. I couldn't bring myself. Like I just was like, oh, they know better. And I just kind of shut down that piece of my business for a little while. And I was still kind of working at a little restaurant in LA. And it was somebody in DA who said to me, it's time for you to quit restaurants. And, you know, your higher power will show you. And I think a week later, the restaurant I was working at closed with 48 hours notice.
Wow.
Like, that's the sign.
I remember that, dude.
And I was fucking terrified. I was terrified.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're going to take your writing coaching business and that's going to be your job. And your acting jobs, because you get acting jobs a couple every year. Those will be your job. And I'm like, dude, those are currently 15 to 20% of my income. Like, are you fucking joking me? I didn't know how. And then COVID hit, you know, a year and a half later, as I was just scraping by, right? And COVID was an insane reckoning for me on so many levels, because I was terrified in a way I can't explain. You know, I would see, you know, you, Yerasimos, or other friends being like, you know, the media is trying to drum up fear and da-da-da. And I'd be like, I would be so deep in my own fear that I was like, no, I hate whoever's saying that. I hate, you know, because it's got to be real. And I was snorting CNN, you know, like I was fucking mainlining the fear. And because there's a feeling, you know, I'm sure you can probably hear it in my talk so far, but I've had versions of OCD, and there's a feeling within health OCD that says, if I can just get more information, I can feel better. If I can just get that piece of information that's going to soothe the OCD, then I can feel better. And I would just search, you know, Twitter and at the beginning of COVID, it was all bad news after bad news after bad news. And it just drove me to this place of, I mean, I can't even tell you. I mean, I was living in a little A-frame house with my friends in Santa Monica, and I didn't want to leave the room when they were out of their room for like months. I mean, it was that fucking bad. I moved into an apartment, and I just started going to every 12-step you could go to. I went to ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. I went to Al-Anon meetings. I worked the steps in Al-Anon. I was going to DA meetings. I was just trying to get better, because I was like, this is not correct. And friends would call me and be like, you know, first of all, like whatever you believe on COVID, you're one of the healthiest, strongest people I know. You're 40 years old. Like, you're fucking fine. You know, like, go live your life like we all are. And just that very thought, you know, and again, in Yerasimos, we can go over it. I mean, I saw Yerasimos sort of flaunting the masks and, you know, saying there's more than meets the eye in the anti-vaccine space. And I was like, as much as I love this person, I hate this person now. You know, I can't. And everything that the media pushed up about vilifying those people became true for me, right? It was like, you were an expression of all my fear, right? You were the boogeyman.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this conversation. If you want to take a step further into our world, connect with us directly. We have an incredible membership community that is currently only $17 a month. I think for the next 15 or so members, we've crossed the 80% threshold towards the first 100 members, at which point the price is going to increase. So it's $17 a month for the first 100 members, and the value proposition at this rate, all I can say is that it's freaking insane. We're doing 5 or 6 live calls a month in some scenarios. We are in July. We have Dr. Edith Chan joining us later this month for an awesome members-only Q&A. And not to mention, just the Telegram space is so much fun, so much value, so much knowledge. So if you want to join our world and, you know, have some amazing community around you, then please head to hereforthetruth.com/FOTT to sign up.
Sorry, I remember, I think it was like, we actually got on a Zoom, like maybe a few months into, you know, the whole COVID thing. And it was kind of like, I was just there to listen to you, and you kind of shared some things that were going on for you, and you let me know this, and I had to stop following you on Instagram. And it was just kind of like, even that moment, that's the fact that we even had that moment, I think set the stage for things to come after, because it was still a conversation and you were still just kind of like really like matter of fact, like, hey man, I love you, I had to stop following you. And then I think, you know, we got off Zoom and then life took what it took in 2020, 2021, we lost touch, but even we still had that initial moment, you know what I mean?
We did, and I think you probably got it from me the least of other people who decided to ostracize you or push you out, because I kept having that part of me that was like, but he's such a thoughtful dude, it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense that I feel like he's so wrong, because he is a smart, I've always thought of him as a smart guy. So again, like going back to that thing that for me, the clarion call has always been that I need help and I can't figure it out on my own. So I had an Al-Anon sponsor who was a therapist, and he said, I don't think the 12 steps can touch what's going on for you. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I was like, you know, fearful that I wouldn't get my like unemployment check from COVID that week or whatever the fuck it was. And he was like, I think this is trauma. I don't think no amount of spiritual awakening, no amount of working the steps and 50 programs is going to make you better. I think you need to do EMDR. And, you know, just like when Larry Moss said to the group, if you're having problems with money and debt, you know, you need to go to DA to figure out who you're debting to. I was like, next day, I was like, how do I get an EMDR therapist? Right. I was like, there's no, you know, for some people, it's like, and I noticed this, how, you know, in some cases, I'm really unteachable. But when I'm up against the wall and in pain, I'm super teachable.
Yeah.
I'm like, just fucking give it to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is hard medicine, but sometimes you need the hard medicine. And literally next day I started emailing people. And I think this was probably like February 2022. I was still, and then by March, I was with an EMDR therapist, seeing her twice a week. And I think Yerasimos, you and I saw each other 2 months into this. And
yeah, we did, because I remember, because, you know, we had lost touch for, let's say, a couple of years, you know, whatever. That time was just crazy. And I remember I had also gone off Facebook because I was just over Facebook. But then, you know, Joel and our podcast started kind of doing its thing. And I decided, like, well, let me just start sharing some things on Facebook. And I noticed you started kind of like liking or hearting some of the episodes, especially the ones that maybe were more personal development based. And I was like, okay, like, you know, we're finding way back to each other in a certain way. And then, like, yeah, like I'd been in Topanga for a couple of years and we hadn't seen each other. And so I was like, why don't you just come up to Topanga and, you know, come see the place. Let's reconnect. And I didn't really know where you were in your like health anxiety journey at that point. Like, I didn't know if you were going to roll up to the front door, like wearing a mask, or like, you can't hug me, but like you rolled up, gave me the biggest hug. And I was like, all right, cool. Let's just reconnect.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important to note, and I'm sure you know this about me, because I feel like I need to caveat it with this. I mean, and you know this about me, I think I walk a pretty fine line between Eastern and Western in terms on the medicine front. You know, I do still think my caregiver I listen to the most is my acupuncturist, but you know, Western is still a part of it. So I didn't go full, I didn't go full here for the truth, you know, like let's dismantle the Western medicine industry. But what I did see is I was like, that there was an overreach in terms of the narrative, and that overreach was plugging into the way I felt. And I mean, look, all I can say is that there's nothing that changed for me faster than EMDR. The changes were, what was it? I broke up with the woman I was seeing at the time because it just didn't. All I can say is that I think a lot of what I thought was love before was trauma bonding. And suddenly I didn't feel as close of a connection. This was like a month into two times a week EMDR. Like I didn't know what, I was like, I didn't understand what was going on. I think within 6 months, my business tripled. I think it doubled at first and it tripled within maybe a year. And I met my future wife, who I went on to, it was, the growth was insane. Yeah. Externally, the growth was insane, but internally,
Can we real quickly, because we talk a lot about trauma and nervous system work and all different modalities, like EMDR has kind of popped up in conversations, but like, can you explain what EMDR is?
Yeah. I mean, I'll explain it the way I understand it. And I actually, the person I have worked with for 3 years now, we actually don't do the eye movement. We do bilateral tapping, which is
Okay.
another way in. But the way I understand it is you go back to a traumatic moment or series of traumatic moments and you reframe the belief system about it. And so much of other therapy, talk-based therapies, are about the conscious understanding of self. Whereas the bilateral tapping taps in, it starts to reprogram and reprocess your unconscious around a memory. So that everything you felt about yourself in a traumatic memory that may have been a negative thought pattern or a negative belief system, you truly start to feel a positive belief system around that, right? Whereas maybe something like some neglect or things of that nature may have felt like, well, I'm not valuable. I don't have value in this world. You start to reframe that, right? Suddenly those memories don't feel the way they felt anymore. They don't play on you anymore, right? All I can say is I'm just not as triggered anymore. Do I still get triggered? Yes. Is it way less? Yes, because I have done tons of targets in EMDR, and by targets, it's a memory or a section of memories, and it's about going into that memory and just letting your unconscious flow from it. And usually, if it's a traumatic memory about something, all of those traumatic memories that were connected come up. And you didn't even know you're on this. You're on like a roller coaster. At
So
the beginning,
does someone have to have
Yeah.
clear traumatic memories to seek out EMDR as a therapy?
I mean, you know, I hate to be someone who says this, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the Gen X, in that latchkey kid space, and kids of the 80s or kids of the early 90s, because there was a lot of probably hands-off parenting, hands-free parenting. I think there is a lot of it, but Joel, I feel like the two things that made me a great candidate for it is I'd already done talk therapy for a decade. I've been in 12-step for 6 or 7 years at that point. So I knew a lot about myself from a conscious awareness place.
Gotcha.
I understood things about myself. But so I don't know, because I think even some of the targets I work on now, they're not exactly a traumatic memory, like getting lost at the store or something like that. It's more a memory that has some negative belief systems around it.
Uh-huh.
Now we're like really reframing.
So you're saying, like, let's say like you got a bad grade in school and then you brought it home and your parent, again, this is hypothetical, is like, you're stupid, you need to do better, like something potentially around that.
Right. Yeah. And again, we all know this, that there are things people said to us over our life that we still remember, right? There's like, remember I had an acting teacher who said to me in 2004, he said, "You'll never be right for the roles that require deep rigor. You never will be, but you can do these like light comedic things. You really don't have it really in you to really think that deep, go that deep, and never forget it. Talk about an introjected villain that will always be in there." So sure, when someone says something to you that hurt you, when you did something that you may not have,
Can you give us an example of like one of the most powerful, I guess, things that had a stranglehold over you, which you were able to reframe as a positive?
I think for me, there was a whole series around, again, I think we as people always want to, I just want to caveat this a little bit, because my relationship with my mother has made so much evolution over time, and it was the 80s and she was a single parent. She was doing her best. But I think being home alone in a 200-year-old house as maybe a 9-year-old, from when I got home from school till sometimes later, because maybe my parent had worked late and maybe they'd gone out for drinks. And I used to sit and just watch the headlights and kind of terrified, almost weeknightly. I think that was very deep in my DNA. Things around waiting, things about abandonment, things about my value. Were so reprogramming that was like, because those, and when you do EMDR, at least when I was doing it, when you go really deep, often the therapist will suggest you go for a long walk afterwards. The images that came up were so dark and traumatic that I would go for like 2-hour walks after our sessions.
Yeah.
I would like walk all night, because there were so many things there were so many images that were like basically kind of shake. Like I feel shaken when they would come to me.
Yeah.
Right. Because my imagination crafted a lot of boogeymen in that house. And that was a really, really deep piece, I think, of my overall DNA, how I interacted with almost every space in my life.
So what does like a reframe or a reprogram of that example look like? Like, is it like a conscious reframe? Like, oh, I can flip this into a positive, or what's the healing mechanism in that?
Well, again, you're doing bilateral tapping, right? So I'm literally tapping on my physical body.
Yeah.
I'm doing right, just like this. I'm doing bilateral tapping, and I am going from that memory to wherever my unconscious leads me. And then there's a piece of the EMDR where I'm starting to try and feed in the positive cognition, the positive belief system that says I am valuable. The world is not a scary place. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. Right. And little by little, just doing that bilateral tapping, the way you feel about the memory changes. It's fucking, honestly, I can say it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And like, again, the external was that my business exploded. I met my wife. I mean, I started dating people who felt like value matches. What I had a value explosion. That's what I call it. I started really saying, and that's right around the time I quit acting, because I was like, this does not match my fucking value. Putting on, spending 3 hours to send a fucking videotape out into the ether where 500 other people are sending a videotape into the ether is no way to make my bones in this world. I am just more valuable than that. And it wasn't like I was angry. It was just fact. Suddenly. I was just like, and now I meet with potential clients and I'm like, you're not a value match for me. Like, just, and the reason why I kind of broke off from 12 step is that the acceptance piece and the own your own part piece, it wasn't working for me. Cause I was like, I don't want to own my own part and I don't want to accept shit. I was like, and I did with both my parents. I was like, you know what? I'm a valuable person. I need y'all to step up as parents. I remember calling Yerasimos. I'm like, I want you to be a bigger friend in my life. Can you do that? When I asked you to be involved in my wedding, I started saying that to people. I'm like, I need more from you. Because I suddenly had this crazy value explosion. And clients always come to me like, how do you get that? And I'm like, you can't think it. You can't think it into your brain. You have to feel it into your body, right? Because we all know people who have issues of value. And suddenly I think that's part of what it was. I started asking for more money from clients, for my work, for my ideas. But that reframing, it was just this crazy, just value explosion. That's, my ideas matter. I matter. And when taking it all back to when I came to see Yerasimos, everything I thought and my health anxiety just got way better. We did targets around health, right? It used to be around the COVID time, if I was in the grocery store and someone coughed to my general direction, I would think about it for a couple hours and I'd go, oh my God, do you think it da-da-da when my brain did that OCD kind of trickle, right, would go. And after EMDR, I would think about it for about 2 minutes and then I wouldn't think about it again.
That's big. I mean, that's a lot of time.
I mean, it is.
To take back from the looping.
And again, for someone who'd been in talk therapy for 10 years to have these kind of results in 3 to 6 months, I was like, holy shit.
Also, because I want to highlight this, because this is what, how you say, like, people say things and it stayed with you. Like, after we had kind of walked around our home and hung out and then, just kind of talking about life, like, we got into the conversation of like what happened between us, And I remember you telling me, you're like, I started doing EMDR and you said I decided 6 months ago to stop watching like mainstream media or a lot of it or whatever, and like, it can't like estimate like the impact of all the like media. You worked in media, like the power of how that impacts you on a conscious level, on a subconscious level. And if you're constantly feeding yourself this fear-based stuff and you have the stuff that like the hooks into you based on like, your past and your anxiety, like that's not a great recipe. So when you said that combined with your personal work, like it showed, man, it showed in who you are. And then we had this moment in the kitchen, man, like where we were just kind of like there and like, I love you. And you're like, I love you. And like, we sat there across from each other with fucking tears in our eyes, And like, for me, like, because especially in our world with what happened in those years, there is so much conversation around people who just thought and said the most horrible things about people in their lives. And then like 4 years later, they just go on like nothing happened. And so when I've shared our story, like in private with people, like, dude, like people are like, yeah, that's never happened in my life, and for you to have the maturity, and even for me to have it, to just be there with you. Cause I on some level, like I knew what you had gone through in your life. And so I had enough understanding of like why you would have those experiences. Do you know what I mean? Cause it was personal there. And like, to just have that moment where we were just getting along in so many different ways, having these conversations, and then to have that moment like, listen, something happened, let's talk about it. Like instead of like, let's push it under the rug and la la la, oh hey, I haven't seen you in forever, how's life?
Well, again, it's one of those things where the inner compass was like, something's wrong. Like you can't, we talk about this like with my son who's 1, it's the idea of repair, right? It's like you do, and that is one of the things I love about 12-step, making amends. Like, there's gotta, showing up and repairing something is such a lost fucking art.
Yeah, man.
And it's like, you were such a meaningful person, and then suddenly you weren't, and suddenly you were a boogeyman, right? You and your wife. I remember when you saw me, you're like, look at me and my wife. Do we look like evil people? Do we look like domestic terrorists? Like, and I was like, yeah, dude. And I forgot, like I did, some people hate this term, but I did go news sober at that time because it was because I saw the patterns. Part of it is I did see the patterns in the media, and I had my own fucking here for the truth, becoming a lion moment where I was like, again, I didn't see it fully as like, it's all a conspiracy, but I saw it. I was like, some of this is not correct. Some of this is being, and that there's a vested interest and a vested objective for a lot of these so-called truths. I mean, again, we've talked about it before. I don't know where I stand in the news space anymore because now I actually can watch it without feeling anxious. And if I go to Reddit, the main news stream of Reddit is so far left that I can't really connect. And then if I go to like the R conservative subreddit, it's so far right that I'm like, this feels like just maybe a little too misogynistic and angry and incel-y over here. And so I'm like, where is for me, right? I'm glad you sent me Kaizen because I was like, great. It feels good for someone who's like, let's step back, like, so I still don't even know where I live in the media space but now I can see it, right? I see it's, and it's funny when I work with my writers, I think when writers start to see what writing really is, you see the Matrix. I mean, I saw the Matrix. I had my Matrix moment, right? Where I was like, oh, right? Like the news is just whatever the fucking new download of COVID is going to be, whatever manufactured war we want to do so that, defense contracts can grow. And I mean, like I saw it. And also I used to be so into politics and I was like, I feel nothing for these people. I feel nothing for any of them. I just like, I think Trump is an entertaining media figure, but all that stuff of like, and I say this to people, I go, why are you connecting your own heart and well-being to someone else's hopes and dreams that has nothing in common with you? I don't get it. So that was also a big awakening. And part of, I think, why that opened that space that I was like, well, I allowed the media to shape my, not just my thoughts, but my deeply held beliefs. And that's part of why it felt right to make you and your wife the villains at that time.
It's incredible, man. Like this is so rare what you're sharing right now. And I think the key thing is, despite the journey that you took and the trajectories and the side paths, etc., like you say, I had a value boost, but I think you always deep down valued that inner compass. And the difference between you and other people is you always had the recognition that if this thing within me is welling up where something's wrong, I'm stagnant, my life isn't moving, I'm destroying friendships that don't need to be, I need to pay attention. And that requires uncommon courage, man. And I feel like at the core of it, you always had that. You always held on to that. And I think that's the reason you've been able to kind of, move through some of these veils for sure.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I always, this is something that a question I ponder a lot, especially in the space of like AA or 12-step or NA, as I go, what's the difference between the person who is in so much pain as an alcoholic or a drug addict that they walk past an AA meeting and they go, I don't need that shit. And then maybe they go on to die or do something terrible. And the person who goes, you know what? maybe there's hope in there. You know what I'm saying? And this is not
Yeah.
not a commercial for 12 step because I have a lot of qualms about it. But what's the difference? You know, where does that get plugged in? The person who has just enough humility to go, fuck, I
Yeah.
my best thinking is not, you know, and that's a very 12 step line, but my best thinking is not getting me anywhere.
Yeah. And like a 12 step doesn't need to be perfect, but it's the stepping stone that you needed at the time to reach the other stepping stones, you know? And that's the base, it's the starting point is like, I need something. Whatever I'm trying to do alone isn't working. So you're calling something in, you engage, you experiment, you try, and you move forward.
Who knows? I mean, honestly, who knows, you know? And people, I think about the fact that my father probably wouldn't be alive without 12 step. I mean, I don't know if mine would be that dramatic, but who knows? That really was. I mean, I had as they say, a spiritual awakening. I just, nowadays, there's parts of it that feel a little too overly dogmatic. And so I stopped going to, actually, when I started going to EMDR, meetings didn't feel good anymore. I went to meetings and I was like, this feels a little like blamey and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I love it, man. It's so good to have this conversation. It's so good to see you the other day with Claire and Jude. What a beautiful little child you have. I guess, man, I love getting into your story. I'm trying to think. I want to talk more about all this, and
Yeah.
I want to get into your writing, man. Like
Yeah.
how do you approach writing? Like, what has shifted for you? Because I know we used to joke. Like, I don't know if it was from some TV show where you got the term. But when we went away for your little bachelor weekend, which was
Oh,
pretty
yeah,
much,
yeah.
let's go eat some good food and see a comedy show.
Yeah.
Like you kept saying like disrupt, bro, disrupt. You know, that was like the thing, like how to be a disruptor. And
Yeah.
it's another thing which I loved about you is because we shared that, like, how can you be a disruptor? Meaning like, how can you go against the grain? And sure, maybe we've gone about it in different ways, but like you've applied this into your work in terms of challenging Hollywood and writing and how someone can go about being a writer. And so I don't, maybe we can talk about that. And then I definitely want to get into this whole AI craze and boom and your views on that.
Yeah. You know, again, I think it goes back to, you know, going back to the rites of passage thing that you talked about. I think for me, I've had different versions of inferiority complexes, right? I think when I first moved to New York, there was an inferiority complex around like rich pedigreed banker types. You know, and when I moved to LA, I think there was some inferiority around the sort of cliquey intelligentsia of the screenwriting community. Like there was this, I didn't know how to get in. It felt like there were all these unwritten rules, and the unwritten rules sounded like kind of like kiss up to somebody for a really long time. And then at the right time, you can make an ask. But if you do it the wrong way, they may never like you again. And I was like, that doesn't feel correct. Like it feels like the entire way they tell you to interact with entertainment as a screenwriter or anybody, it feels so trauma based. It's like, you know, you only get one ask in this thing. And I mean, I talked about this on our pod the other day, you know, showrunners, there's all these tweets about like, you know, don't borrow my time, you know, like don't ask me directly for a job. Like in what industry should you not ask directly for a job? There's just all these cliquey and my own inferiority, you know, and I always present myself to my coaching clients as an insider outsider, right? Like I have all these outsider thoughts, but I did play the inside game a little bit. You know, I had some scripts, you know, win some contests, and I had a pitch that I'd written with another showrunner that was in the market for a while. This thing we had written on reincarnation, this pilot I had written. So I was kind of doing it and starting to kind of make inroads, but there was just something about it that felt so weird that all the relationships, you know, people are always like, I can't reach out to someone that it might burn my contacts. So especially in the space of like having this value explosion, I was like, the language of entertainment is fucking broken. And this weird fear-based apprentice forever, pay my dues mentality just felt so antithetical to what I felt powerful, disruptive artists should do. And also, entertainment is not a meritocracy. So why would you sell it as merit? Why would you sell it as a merit-based fucking thing? It's the furthest thing from meritocracy. It is, I've said it on the pod, it's a chaosocracy. There is no rules, right? The rules are date a Nepo baby and try and get a pitch into a studio that way. I mean, you know what I mean? Or fucking make the news, make the New York Post for dating somebody that you shouldn't date or doing something terrible, and then maybe you'll get a pitch with a studio. Like that's the closest thing to a rule there is. There's no rules. It is meant for disruption, but the industry doesn't want to be disrupted. So I just started looking at everything all the other screenwriting schools were preaching about, like, make a friend, wait 7 years to ask that friend for your one favor. And then if they say no, then go make another friend for 7 years. I'm like, well, what the fuck do you do in the meantime? Work at Starbucks? Yeah. Like, it just felt so broken, the whole language. And so I've made a lot of what I do about trying to disrupt industry norms of engagement and saying, you know, I think the whole thing they tried to sell us, Yerasimos, and other actors in New York, like, become a co-star, say one line on a TV show, and then one day you'll be a series lead. Bullshit. That does not happen. That is what they sell to people so that they will go say one line and be grateful for it, to just be working. #blessed. You know, like, the entertainment industry is no longer a place for people who want to earn abundantly. And I'm trying to coach writers who want to earn. I'm trying to get them to fucking checks. So, you know, my goal for people is, like, stop listening to all your fear-based friends and try and get in start at the highest level and do it by having a pro-level script, a pro-level strategy, and thinking of your work like an entrepreneur would, right? Think about positioning, marketing, where it fits in the market, right? I mean, no one wants to talk to you unless you have a star attached anyway. So go sell your soul to get a star attached. If you want a process, that's a process. But I just got sick of this, like, touchy, don't make him mad. I saw this tweet. It made me so angry. It was from a showrunner 6 years ago. I won't say the name. And she was like, don't waste my time. If I give you 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes I could have been using listening to a podcast or reading a book. Don't ask me directly for a job ever. Say to me, if there's ever anything possibly maybe available, I will be open to it. Don't ask. In what industry does it say don't ask?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was just like, that's fucking dumb. And I'm out here with all my clients trying to, through their successes, prove that there's another way.
Yeah. Sounds like the Ayn Rand of screenwriting coaching.
It's just, what are we putting these people on pedestals for, and saying, especially when you hear from so many people that top level writers are not as good as the lower level writers, or people say, like, that person's writer's room for that show was held down by their mid-level writers because the showrunners didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah. But it's almost like, it sounds like, to succeed within the industry norms, like, you have to adopt a value system that is completely contradictory to normal human flourishing. And so it just fosters this space of muck and low self-esteem and bullshit. And, like, sounds like what you're doing is like, no, let's lift ourselves up. Let's raise the bar. Let's raise the tier. And let's bring real value to the table and try to switch things up, which makes sense.
And the value equation is so broken. Even those strikes that, for better or worse, you know, I have some thoughts about the strike that were not exactly pro-strike, but even those strikes, which felt like they went on forever, like, they didn't even get much. Yeah. You know, like, they didn't even get. I mean, both actors, and they're so far away from what their true value is, that they did, you know, it's like their negotiating starting point was, okay, you know, could we get a 5% raise on residuals? Meanwhile, streaming companies are making hand over fist. I mean, I was on Yellowstone, 14 million people watched that episode. And I was in, let's say I was in 7% of the episode, 6% of the episode. I mean, how much money do you think I made? Not much. Right? Like, what about fucking profit sharing for all artists involved at the percentage that you were involved in the production?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about the details of all that, but I mean, I know with everything going to streaming,
right,
things have shifted for whether it's artists, you know, actors, musicians, etc. The game has changed. So, yeah.
It's hard for me to look at the modern business of the actor or the writer or the creator and not see a subtle and innate addiction to under-earning. Under being, you know.
And it's almost like this tacit acceptance, just go along, and it feels like something that just is, and something for them probably that can never change, and they're just buried under this burden of this thing that's crushing them, in the hope that there's going to be a breadcrumb one day in the future. It's like a classic, like, narcissistic relationship, actually, you know.
Totally. And because the narrative is always, there's someone who will replace you. There's someone who will take
you're replaceable.
Yeah. There's someone who will take scale, who's just as good and just as handsome and just as talented and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Right. So, you know, that's the strategy piece of what I do. And then, you know, the craft piece of what I do is it's really about becoming a narrative master on the like making narrative so instinctual that if you were in a pitch, in a Hollywood pitch, and they said, can you have 3 more ideas or can you expound upon this? Your brain will be able to come up with it in a fucking heartbeat. Because what I teach people to do is to shift their instincts. I mean, people come to me and the work we do is basically like brain surgery, because the way they think about crafting narrative is so far away from what the real way to do it. I mean, I talk about the conceptual and the intuitive a lot, right? Sort of, and this is not my IP. I took this from somebody and I've kind of made it my own, but this idea that there's a conceptual part of the writer's brain that is the planning part, right? The math part that is, saying, well, this needs to be paid off in the 3rd act, and this is going to be paid off in the 5th season. They think far and wide. And the intuitive part that feels and hears characters, and feels like they're in the room with them. And so the great writer is an integrator who can do both of those. Most writers, one of those are atrophied in them, and they don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
So really that's what I work people towards, and then eventually the pitching skill, which is the hardest for me to teach, because pitching is both crafting narrative on the spot and selling at the same time. And particularly artists do not think that way. It's anathema to their belief system often. Selling, what do you mean?
Yeah, sales is just like a dirty word to so many people, even people who want to be coaches, but I don't know if I want to, how do I sell myself and sound sleazy, or like I'm trying to get something from someone.
Right. I mean, you sell your movie or your script or your idea so you can go make another one. So, I have friends who've built homes on the strength of their writing ideas, like, so you can live your life and keep creating more art, not so you can become some evil money grubber. I mean, it's like, my clients have gone to friends and they're like, it's weird that you're so into positioning your film. Like, maybe if you just let it happen more. And my clients are like, no, like, I'm doing way better than you. Why would I listen to your, again, sort of addiction to this under earning? Let's go to the edges. Let's make another short film that goes to one of the 12 million film festivals and get a consolation and get our participation trophy. Hey,
Yeah.
made a short film.
Yeah, this seems to relate so much just from a general standpoint. Joel and I talk about this in our group coaching program, Rise Above the Herd, just like people's relationship to money in general. You know what I mean? The relationship to money, whether it's under earning, whether it's like what you said before, evil people have money, and we see even a lot of programming through the media and that, like all the shitty characters are the real rich billionaires that are there to just ruin everything. You know what I mean? And it's like, and the noble character is the poor person, So again, this is all this subtle programming. We've done episodes on this that like impact you. Not to mention just like the political stuff and all the other stuff that like infiltrates our minds, or things that maybe that are being taught in schools and academia. Like, and so it's like, it's rare to be like, hey, like I'm an individual, I have value, I want to create, I want to produce, and I want to be rewarded for my mental brilliance and my creativity and what I bring forth in the world. Oh my God, how dare you think that? You're so full of yourself and selfish.
I mean, Christianity, right? I mean, Jesus was, right? This, and humility has been weaponized. Can't you just have some more humility? Can't you just be more grateful for what you have? That it's been weaponized, right? Humility, I think, is code for don't ask for more. Don't ask me for more. That's what it's code for. Just be humble. Just be grateful for what you have. And it's so, that shit is all over the entertainment industry. Just be grateful to be on set. Don't think about the fact that you're making $1,000 on this show and you may not work again for another quarter, and life doesn't exist on $1,000 a quarter. I don't know where the fuck you live. But
the original definition of humility, you won't find this if you Google it today, but it's to have a low sense of one's self-importance. And doesn't that speak to everything we're talking about?
Yeah. Like, I get it. Like, and we've had multiple conversations on this, and I love that you said that, because like I have like my issues with like humility and like how it's just like thrown out there for everything. It's just like, okay, I can understand. I can have humility that I don't know everything. Like, I like that. But when it's like this thing to make you accept being small and be grateful for what you have, and like not like have value in yourself, it's like also in Australia, I know they have the tall poppy syndrome, or the tall poppy thing, where it's like, if you get to a certain place, or if you think yourself, and again, this isn't meant to come from like an egotistical, quote unquote, egotistical place, just like living and embodying like, damn, like I'm dope as fuck. You know what I mean? Like, and I tell my
clients often, and I'm going to butcher it and paraphrase it, but I tell them to go watch Snoop Dogg's Walk of Fame speech, because the first thing he says is, the first thing I'd like to do is thank me. Because there's a fine line between self-belief and arrogance. And I think you got to go right up to it, right? Like, I think that self-belief component, I often say it's a bigger skill set than just the writing skill set in what I'm trying to get people to do. Just fucking believing that what you say is so dope.
Yeah, totally. But the thing is, like, arrogance, the term arrogance has become so broadened in our society today that any individual that actually has self-value, values themselves, values their rational desires and wants, falls under this arrogance category for not putting everyone else first before themselves, you know? And this is what Rand spoke about in depth with the virtue of selfishness, you know, selfishness in its core essence, to value the fact that you live, and money as the sustenance of your being. It's literally the lifeblood of your existence. No one can really survive or thrive without money. Like, that's the highest act of morality, to value the fact that you live and value what you need to live. And we all need money to live.
Yeah. I mean, we look at people who are doing well a lot on social media, and we both actively hate them and are jealous, you know, we're like, oh, fuck, I hate that person. They have such a strong point of view and they're doing so well. Look at their life.
Yeah, and a lot of that times it's also even crafted. Like, you don't even know what else is going on behind the scenes too. So that's a whole nother level to it, you know? But I get it. Like, again, it's like the want, the envy, you know, like the compare and contrast game that social media sucks you into, which is like, man, like, this is why I love like human design or these other systems or anything that can just put the gaze back to yourself. Focus on you, who you are, your gifts, what you can build, what you create, because you can get lost in the compare and contrast game, man.
Yeah. And like that jealous, envious type, they don't really hate what the other person has. They hate that they don't have the fortitude and the courage to go for what they really want. And instead, they keep getting zapped by this unconscious electric fence, which says, stay small, don't stand out, don't put yourself first, don't, you know, rise above the herd any means.
And they feel like they're so far away from it, right? Like they just feel, yeah, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes for those people. Oh man, the other thing I was going to say you made me think of is that the language of the gatekeepers in Hollywood is all about getting you to check your whatever at the door. Do you know who you are? Talking to me? I've seen emails like that. You're just emailing my office. You're just calling my office. How dare you? Like, do you know, it's all about this sort of like shaming. I saw that a lot in my family of origin. Like, you know, and again, I always say it goes back to Depression era mentality. When there was nothing and you asked, you would be shamed, right? Because there was so little. So now that's pervasive. The idea that being asked something is an affront to people. How dare you? Do you know who I am? Do you know who you are? Have some humility. Pay your dues first. That is the literal fucking Darth Vader narrative of the gatekeepers. And I'm just like, no, sorry.
Yeah. And imagine how much of that person had to go through before they became the petty tyrants and all of a sudden was in the position of the gatekeeper. I mean, like, how dare you, you know? Yeah.
There's no industry, well, maybe it's all of them, where the blind are truly leading the blind, where really no one knows anything and they are just looking for the next trend. Agents and managers, what is the next trend? They're not, it's not, you know, they for the most part, there used to be, but it's, you know, that is not a skill set.
No, and it's the perfect storm for low grade, superficial bullshit content, you know?
Right. Right. Which leads us into this whole thing, or this whole AI thing, right? Or at least leads me into part of what I was thinking about it.
What are your thoughts on AI and how AI, I guess, has come into the creative scene, and what do you see coming out of this kind of, you know, blend?
Well, the first thing I think is that we continue to listen to the heads of industry to set the standard or the moral standard. And the narrative there is that if you oppose progress, then you will be left behind. You know, they said this about the internet. They said this. So we look to the industry leaders and we go, tech, right? And we're like, well, listen to them. That sounds right. But fucking tech people are not artists. I do not care how many tech companies buy streaming networks and how many formerly tech executives get in on meetings with the top directors. You are not an artist. So do not tell me how to make art, right? Because the whole idea of AI is about efficiencies. I'm sorry, art is not just about efficiencies. Artists are not saying, please help me streamline. Please help me go faster. Art is truly a journey into self, right? And the way that ChatGPT gets you and the way that the tech overlords get you is they say, once they help you kind of reorganize your outline, they say, would you like me to give you the first paragraph? And right there, you're fucked. Because once you say yes and you think it sounds better than what you could come up with, you're going to have a hard time telling your brain that you're going to be able to craft a better idea. And now your flow to ideation, which is truly cosmic and spiritual, is snapped.
Yep.
Because you now believe you've given your power away and you've let the AI instill doubt in you. You think it's a better writer than you, and you go, now the ideation goes like that. And it's going to be hard to get your brain to go, no, ideation goes into the heart, into the head, into the, my ideas come from 30 minutes of meditation every morning, right? Like, so that's the first way they get you. And what AI is going to do, look, and I can be the old man yelling at clouds all you want. We can look back at this in 5 years and go, look, Nick, you were so wrong, whatever. I think artists deep down know something is wrong. What it's doing is it's robbing the writer, the narrative artist, the artist of their coming of age, right? People find themselves in work. The things we write, the artists were literally, Eugene O'Neill was crying and screaming through Long Day's Journey into Night. They learn about their humanity through the work. Yep. Springsteen in his early records was reaching into the depths of his trauma so that we could learn about the depths of our trauma. So that is the writer's coming of age. And AI is a prompt-based system. Its goal is efficiencies. There is no way it will not rob us of the writer's coming of age, the writer's journey in. When I work with people, I swear to God, sometimes I'm just a professional annoyer. I'm just like, you can go deeper. Like there's fucking more here. There's something you're not telling me about this that is way more interesting, way more personal. Art is all of us reaching into our deepest, darkest images, just like I did to you when I shared about my trauma today, so that you can have images about your trauma and you can learn about self, right? The artist learns about self by making the art, so we can learn about self by listening to the art. Mm-hmm. That's why we feel so close to writers and filmmakers and artists. Now, again, I use ChatGPT. I use it to help me streamline process when I break down things, but when it starts to become an ideator, even because it always wants to. That's the gateway. That's where text like, artists, we got you. Come on, don't you want to see those first 10 pages? What about, it happens to me all the time. You want to see what that newsletter looks like? I don't. I want to find it on my own. I want to go into my brain and find words. I want to go to thesaurus.com and think about a different word right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's my basic premise on it, is that I don't know any artists who are saying, help me with efficiencies. It's,
I completely agree. I don't think AI has a place in genuine art by any means whatsoever. I think it's a productivity tool. It's not a creation tool.
Right. Right. And the question is, when it comes over, what is it doing to us, right? Because right now we're seeing a crazy contraction in the entertainment industry. Process was already on its way out, right? Larry Moss used to talk about process being on its way out. Now it's like, we want product yesterday.
By the way, for our audience, Larry Moss is like a really well-known acting teacher.
Thank you for the context.
I worked with years ago, and obviously you have, and many have.
A couple times,
yeah. A couple. Yeah, so just wanted to let our probably audience that doesn't know about acting teachers know who he is.
I look him up. He's a visionary for sure.
What was it? His one book was really great. What is it? Something to Live, or The Life of the Actor? Anyway,
yeah, The Intent to Live. The Intent to Live.
Yeah. Great book.
So that's where I start, and again, it's like, we don't know what that's going to do. We don't know what that's going to do to society. But all I'm saying is, because the villains in all this, the villains are us, right? Like we live in a fucking ready-made world. Give me more ready-made.
I think it's going to make a real art way more valuable, because the market's going to get flooded with bullshit, superficial ideas, content, product. And so when you have the raw, real thing, it's going to hit people in a different way, I think.
Yeah. Well, I even see it. I'm seeing it now with all the copy that everyone is using. And it's like, if you engage with ChatGPT enough, you know how it speaks.
Yeah.
And so you just see it. And then it's just like, I just don't enjoy it as much. Like you see people that like can't spell properly or ever use grammar, and now all of a sudden they have the most polished, like perfect sounding like copy, and you're like, just I mean, maybe I would judge your lack of spelling and grammar, but at least you sounded like yourself, you know. And I say this as someone who utilizes ChatGPT. You know, Joel and I use it to support us in our business. You know, it supports me with my writing as someone who has ideas and stories. Like I write a lot of stuff, and then ChatGPT helps me a little bit, and then I go back and edit crazily. You know, like the cut and paste like element of it, like it's almost so noticeable. You know, as opposed to like a deeper co-creative. Well, maybe I don't know if that's the right word, but co-process. And even then, sometimes I'm just like, like Joel and I, you know, we have group coaching programs and emails and newsletters, and we're setting things up. And like, it was just like yesterday where, I mean, I had the most massive headache, so I'm happy Joel was a straight G, but like, we were like trying to get some emails that were going to go out automatically for a program.
We're working on an email sequence, and we decided
like
to engage.
Sequence.
Sorry?
Like a welcome sequence.
Well, just like the email sequence for different elements of the program.
Sure. Yeah. And like we're engaging Claude. We fed it like all the material, etc. And just what it kept producing time and time again. We were just looking at each other, like almost like vomit inducing, like literally, you know. And I'm like, this is fucking taking way longer than if I just if I just raw dogged this. Then I was like, fuck
100%,
you know. And we fucking closed it up. I put up a note screen. And it's I just had the cosmic download, man.
I mean, you're a writer too, so you know.
I was just in the flow, just banged out like stuff I'm really, really proud of. And I'm like, we never would have ever gotten that if we took the lazy routes. The lazy route, which actually is more time than the other route. If I can just tap in, and the self-esteem that comes from tapping in and bringing forth the goods is like just worth it anyway.
100%. The creative adversity, it grows your self-belief, right?
Bro,
overcoming,
100%,
like
100%.
sitting in the fucking bathtub for an hour and going, how do I figure out that third fucking act? And then a week later, how do I figure out that third fucking act? I still can't. And then it comes to you in a fucking meditation. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then you give it to, and you pitch it to someone. They're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, that is how we come of age. And this is another one of my main points. The fucking large language model, don't get me started. You know, once you take out all the stupid ass M dashes, there is a sameness to the tone, and tone as a writer is your identity.
Yeah.
That's your fucking identity.
Yeah.
You find your identity on the page through tone, right? It's not every story's been told. It's the way you tell the story. It's the way your characters talk, which tells us about you. And if you let the LLM become your tone, we are on the way to a fucking crazy level of homogeny in art. And it is going, I don't know what it's going to do, but like, do you want
honestly, like I mentioned, I hear you, I agree with you, but I'm not fearful of it because I feel like a real artist in a way should like welcome it. Yeah, all of you get dumbed down, all of you become homogenized. I'll keep doing my thing, you know?
This is, well, first off, going back to you guys using it, and I've used Claude as well. And look, I've sat with Claude and I've pitched around an idea before because I wanted to see what it could do. And I was, and again, here's the other thing about you two guys. You guys also have thought long and hard about your ideas long before chat ever was in the world. You both thought about, what do I care about? How do I make strong points about what I can? You know, you've done so much original thinking that sure, on some level, chat can maybe be a plug-in to amplifying that a little bit. But again, those people who first go to it for an idea and then say, well, that idea is better than any idea I'll ever come up with. Because look, writing is fucking hard. No. What I do with people, it's hard. So why not just skip that? Like, people are like, when you look, machines automated fucking driving, right? We got Google Maps. No one knows a phone number. But do we want it to automate something that's hard? And it's hard because it chisels out an amazing fucking narrative human. And Joel, to your point, that's my thing with my writers, because I've seen it start to take them. I've actually started to ban it from sessions because I started seeing it take a writer down a road of not trusting herself. And now she wrote me the other day and she goes, I read an email from one of my other coaches and I can see the large language model all over it. And it's so boring. They're saying the exact same things I was writing. She's like, you're so right. So I'll tell a story. I had a client was doing a pitch to an executive the other day. And I just said to chat, can you make this shorter? It was about 27 minutes. We needed it to be about 17. And chat changed everything. It didn't make it shorter. It changed contextual points. And we were like, it felt like it sounded good. And I read it like 2 nights before the pitch. And she had written some of it. I'd co-written some of it and given her ideas. And I was like, this does not feel good coming off the human tongue. Something feels wrong. So I went back like you, Joel, and I rewrote every single line in that pitch.
Yeah.
And I had her co-write it with me. And I was like, what do you think? Gave that pitch, and the executive was like, that's the best pitch I've heard like all year. And every word was us. And I think if we'd done the LLM version, they would have been able to fucking ignore it because it would have felt that same sameness.
Yeah.
Right.
Because what stands out and what really clicks and connects with someone in that moment, it's intangible. It's like this different spark. It's this different level of like energy or like something that smashes you in the heart at a certain point. And it could be at any point in the thing. And I just don't believe the LLM models are capable of that. They're not tapped into the ether. They're not tapped into emotion. They're not tapped into, whatever's out there that possesses us to put it on a page.
And again, Joel, I don't know, because I'm not a tech person, right? But maybe they will be able to solve it. Maybe they're able to make it more human and whatever. But I still think, like you said, the person who can think narratively IRL, which is what I say to my clients all the time, will be super fucking valuable.
Yeah.
Go get that skill. Learn how to drive a really strong point and a strong argument in the thought leadership space. Learn how to, think about in stories, escalations, right? Story turns. Like, get your brain patterned for that because you are a better writer than the LLM. The first problem is people think the LLM is a better writer than them, and then you're lost.
Yeah.
Right in that moment, because you're never going to go back. You're never going to.
I wonder how it's going to be in the future because, like, I'm 34 years old, right? I've had many experiences where I'm like, I've had awesome original ideas. I've put them on paper. I've been like, I'm really fucking proud of what I've written here. But for like new writers that haven't had that feedback within themselves and it's just overridden by AI and they don't have that self-recognition of I can actually produce something great. I'm curious how that dance is going to be for people coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, all I can think is that it has to be a personal revolution. I mean, right? It's like you have to, because you're never going to get the fucking tech overlords to say, well, we should stop this. There's never going to be some sort of moral stop where they're like, we don't know where this is going. It's going to have to be you. And I think it goes a lot to the teachings of Here for the Truth and Rise Above the Herd. It's like, it's going to have to be you that stops and goes, wait a second. I want to ideate on my own. I want to learn. I want to believe that my ideas are super valuable and that the machine can't do better than I can do. So I'm going to go sit in meditation, in journaling, in talking with other people and work this out on my own. And I'm going to gain something that I never would have gained by just saying, yeah, Chad, how should I start this first act? Give me those first 10 pages and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, it's like we started this conversation and we start all our conversations with new guests off with what are some rites of passage that you've gone through? And like, what is a rite of passage? Like writing a story is a rite of passage. Taking something from nothing and creating it is a rite of passage. And so it's like you're almost robbing yourself of that rite of passage as a creative person.
I mean, fuck, Kerouac. I mean, all these people who lived their work. I listened on that Michael Tsarian episode. I was moved when he talked about the idea of duty, of vocation and duty. And like for writers, there's no line, right? It's like their life is their writing. Mm-hmm. And they live art. They live in a life of art and it becomes their work. When you see something and you're like a piece of graphic design or art or whatever, and you go like, that's amazing. It's because that dude's lived a crazy life. You see that amazing graphic design, it looks trippy, it looks like an acid trip. You're like, that dude's like been through it and fucking studied everywhere. And that's where that piece of imagery came from. And now any fucking asshole in the Silicon Valley can press a button and be like, look, dude, look at this crazy graphic design this came up with. Dude doesn't have any of the like lived experience or taste. Yeah. Like that is again, and look,
even beyond the production element of what AI can do, it's like the richness of the life available to you when you soak in your arts and you contemplate your own ideation. That in itself is invaluable, and you can never trade that. When at the end of the day, you get to look back and think, wow, all the time I spent journeying with myself to produce great art or to come up with amazing ideas. Like that in itself, beyond what I can produce, is worth it,
Resilience. I mean, you before I did EMDR, I used to think that my self-medicating drug of choice was acting class, because learning about myself in roles taught me so much about like just trying to figure out roles. Like I was healing myself, right? So like, again, overcoming these things, it's not just like, well, I want to get good at writing. It's like, no, you're crafting your identity.
Yeah.
You're finding out what you really fucking feel. I say to people all the time when they come to my work, they're like, well, I got an idea for a horror film. And I'm like, well, what do you fucking care about? What are you on fire to talk about? Because your work needs to start with an objective like that. Not like, oh, I want to write a horror film in the $5 million space that's aliens or whatever.
Yeah. Carl Jung has a great quote. He says, we do not possess creativity. Creativity possesses us.
Mm.
And I think when you engage in these shortcuts, you rob yourself of that connection. You rob yourself of the muse coming and embracing you and having that feeling.
I mean, it truly is when you solve something, it's truly spiritual. And when you share it and people go, thank you for that. You listen to that song and you cry, you read that last chapter of the book. I mean, I was just reading a very popular book, probably not on your reading list, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, one of the biggest books of 2024. And I was weeping onto the page because of the humanity. I mean, it's just like, fuck, man, she reached right into me and crafted these characters that felt like I knew them, right? Like, damn, dude. And to do that, I guarantee she had to have multiple dark nights of the soul. And we don't want to avoid dark nights of the soul, right? I would have never had that reconciliation with Erasmus if I didn't have my own dark nights of the soul. My dark nights of the soul are the reason why I'm here, the reason why I have a business, the reason why people want to work with me.
Mm. I love it, man.
And look, I hate to be an old man yelling at clouds. I've thought about this a lot because I always say in the thought leadership space, it's hard to just be against something, right? It's hard to just be like, whoa, against. So I think in the solution space, again, it's, get hungry to go through that coming of age. Get hungry for that on your own because you will stand apart. That's the solution. Yeah. Go get hungry to come of age as an artist. To do what Springsteen did and tap into trauma that he never would have had to tap into if someone didn't say, I don't know what the record was. I'm paraphrasing terribly, but somebody looked at his first record and was like, there's more here. And then on that second record, he went in really deep and went into his soul and things that maybe he never wanted to share and put it in the work. And I mean, people in the 80s and they're forever changed listening to that record because they were like, I'd never heard someone talk about their trauma that way. I never heard someone talk about their pain that way.
The different ways people are here for the truth, and I say this on this podcast often, like the podcast isn't just let's talk about all the things that are happening out there, but like, who are you? What do you love? What do you value? Can you dive into the depths of you and share that? Do you have a deep level of self-knowledge? What is the truth of your story, of your past, of your present, and bring that into the world, so it's like the double meaning. It's not just, again, like, oh, every conspiracy, you know what I mean? Like, It's just really like the things that we're talking about here, like here for the truth as a writer. What does that mean?
And you guys are also reframing the human experience over and over again, right? It's like it's a reframe on the human experience. And every time it's reframed, somebody gets something new and they may get the piece that saves their life.
Yeah, man.
That's why, I mean, the value and what I saw in the value in the show when you started at Yerasimos, when we were sort of at odds, was they may get the piece, right? Because that's what questioning leads to. Questioning leads to going, maybe I'm not right in that arena. I mean, again, maybe.
And that's where I think humility is good, like what I talked about earlier, like even the title, Here for the Truth. We didn't call the podcast, We Have the Truth. We're here for it. And so why can't we have conversations that might even be really out there? Like I tend to be a free speech absolutist to a certain degree. And it's like, why are we so fearful of just disagree with something or be like, I don't believe in that. That's stupid. Like, get the ideas out there, get the things out there. We can grapple with them as like free thinking beings, and everyone's free to then go, oh, that's full of shit, which we see, but like, that's what man, that was our initial thing,
Well, people are conflict averse, which takes me to one last point about AI that I would be remiss if I didn't mention. There are two other things. That AI is also a bit of a yes man.
Mhm.
It is always like, that's great. Let's go down that road. And sometimes you need someone to redirect you and be like, no, those ideas will never connect. Or that narrative doesn't have enough duration to last as long as you think it's going to last. Like, that's another piece. But the other thing I want to say, Erasmus, in terms of being here for the truth, I would also be remiss if I didn't say that so much of this thinking didn't come out of my own existential dread about future-proofing my own business, right? And future-proofing the writing craft. There is some real, and I think people have felt that dread and go, well, the answer to that dread is I'm just going to fucking adopt it whole hard. Like I'm just going to adopt it. And so I would be remiss to not admit that there's not a part of me that doesn't feel some sense of existential dread about, the future of my business, the future of writing, the future, I know the WGA is feeling this way as well. And the people in the publishing and author space are feeling this way as well. So, I've thought about it I thought about it for so long, Joel, that I've changed viewpoints on it a couple times.
Yeah.
And it's moved. And I think only recently I've really started to, and you guys have seen probably the two studies that have come out. The one recently that said there was tons of cognitive debt that chat was creating, and that people's brains were atrophying at about a 47% rate. And then there was another article that came out that said college students are straight up depressed because they feel like they have no agency. They don't feel like they have their own ideas. So I felt like there's been a real like fucking alarm bell in me that's like, you got to speak out on this, man. Like you just have to, and not just for fear of your own business, because I have an entrepreneur mindset. If I need to fucking pivot, I can pivot. But like, learning to write is really valuable to humanity, and great stories, they absolutely evolve our culture, right? I mean, Uncle Tom's Cabin allowed the Civil War to happen because it got people thinking and really feeling for the slaves. I mean, books change, Ayn Rand, I mean, these books change culture. So like learning to write and dig into your depths and share your truth in a way we haven't heard, that shit is super important outside of my own fear about the future of my industries.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine like Ayn Rand, like having AI create 1,300 pages of Atlas Shrugged, and like what the fuck that would sound like and what that would be like? Ugh, like.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. And like, I think ideation is the crux, and you can use AI and it still serves a place, because it's like, okay, help me be more productive with my writing. Help me generate a schedule that works for me. I'm feeling stuck creatively. Can you guide me to some exercises that can help unlock some flow? It's like, it still has its purpose as a tool in certain ways, but it's like when it comes to like replacing that ideation phase, I think that's when, things turn sour for sure.
I always say to it, don't offer new ideas or rewrite any of the text.
Yes.
If I use it to organize, I say, I don't want any new ideas from you in this.
Yeah.
And yet I always find some, but.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like I have to be like, listen, why are you're supposed to be intelligent and you're not. You're being stupid right now.
Hey, I still go to it and say, hey, my stomach hurts. Do you think I have stomach cancer? I still go to it. I still will have it be a
well, listen, it's served a lot of value for me from a research standpoint. Like if we're remodeling something or working in the garden, like I like it. It feels like it's like a search engine on steroids in some regards, and it has helped me put together some things. And because, I feel like, me, like I got little thoughts coming from everywhere, and it's just like, oh, cool. Let me sit down and get some ideas on the page. It's helped me craft my writing in a way. But you're talking about spending a lot of the time writing your own stuff, editing, changing things, which I feel like it takes a lot of time,
I'm full raw dog. I'm full, like, just like Joel, I'm full raw dog now. Anytime it's me crafting either a newsletter or anything that's narrative, I won't even go there.
No, that'd be a good challenge, even more so now for me too, to experience and
but even I think what also becomes more valuable is like even messier writing, like not even needing perfect human prose. I think what's going to stand out more than anything else is just like, the real fucking thing, just like conscious streaming in a sense, without it having to be perfectly edited phrase rethought about 7 times. It's
Yeah, we
like,
don't need
let me
3
just
points
speak to you.
with a comma in every supporting sentence. Like
Yeah.
100%, we want to see the edges, right? All
Yeah.
these like auto fiction specialists, like Rachel Cusk. I mean, they're like writing exactly what they're feeling at the exact moment. It's so like kind of dirty and imperfect.
Yeah.
Like you can go right into it, like
Yeah.
that's and memoir. I mean, fucking intuitive digressions. Like, don't ever let chat do an intuitive digression for you. You want that to come right from your own heart.
Yeah.
It's inspiring, man. It's a very inspiring conversation in so many different ways. One, I've known you longer than most people I'm connected to in my life right now. And I'm so grateful for our relationship, our friendship, even the journey it's been on, where we've had a couple moments where we're like, yeah, nah, man, we're not gonna talk for a couple years, whatever. And man, to where it is now. And I just and I've always had deep respect for you, and I just love everything that you're doing, and I'm happy that it worked out. When I saw you the other day, we're having this conversation, and it's like, yo, let's do a podcast, about this, because I think it's important, and I love the way you talk about creativity, and yeah, man, just I love the journey that you've been on, and I know it's just going to continue. And yeah, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Joel. Great to see you. Hope to see you in person again soon.
Totally, bro, for sure, man. Yeah, I'm super grateful that we had this conversation. And, I got to give credit to Nick again, because the difference in this relationship that allowed you two to reconcile was that self-reflective aspect of Nick that continued and persevered throughout all the bullshit, throughout all the programming that was thrown at him, And for most people, I think, in their lives and in our space that had dissonance with friends, like that friend didn't have the quote unquote humility, that self-respective piece of let me be here for the truth at all costs. It never really kicked in and activated, where it's like, I feel like you crave equilibrium. You craved restoring, rightness to your world more than anything else. And that's what allowed this to be possible and allowed this beautiful story to be shared here today.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Oh, Nick, anything you want to share with our audience, man? Like, there might be writers listening. How can they contact you, engage you, find out about your work?
I mean, hey, man, if you're willing to go down that dark gauntlet to get fucking great at screenwriting and get, be able to be strong in a room and be able to disrupt this industry, then you can reach out to me at nick@pageonetv.com. We have our podcast, Beyond the Script, where we're always talking about both mindset and strategy. And I'm usually sharing the point of view of trying to disrupt these silly ass Hollywood norms. So be sure to check out Beyond the Script. Reach out to me at nick@pageonetv if you want to work with me to craft something great that could change others' lives and change your own life in the making.
Awesome, man. We'll have those links in the show notes.
What level, is there a specific level of writer that you take on, or is it like anyone that's interested? Like where's that positioned?
Usually it's early career or mid-career screenwriters. Usually once people have had a couple of wins, they generally don't want help anymore, or they don't think they need help anymore. So usually it's people who have either had one win in the industry space, or they're a little bit past the aspiring. They have some contacts, they've made some inroads. But I think the thing that separates clients to people, the wheat from the chaff for people who work for me, is people who are really just hungry, because I'm sort of an accelerator to go deep and get so good that they can't be denied. So they're all over the map. I mean, knowing a lot about yourself is a good starting place, or having that's a good starting place for writers, because that's where we're going to start.
Yeah.
But yeah, I work with, I think it's usually early career screenwriters to mid-career screenwriters, usually people who've had 4 to 5 wins. They've been on shows. They feel like they don't need help anymore. And I have whole thoughts on that, but they feel like the teachability goes down. But yeah.
Cool, man. All right, y'all. We'll have Nick's links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Just before you go, guys, every single Friday, we're dropping some awesome articles on hereforthetruth.com, and they're going out specifically to our email list. So if you head to hereforthetruth.com/Friday, simply pop in your email. Every single Friday, you're going to get a nuanced take from Yerasimos or myself on the topics that really matter to us. I'll got awesome feedback from these articles. So jump on the list if you feel called. Hereforthetruth.com/Friday. Thanks again for listening.